and welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and our guest today you might be a little bit familiar with if you closely follow our Yarn Factory listeners episodes. She was one of part of the, I think it was actually the second.
Yeah.
It was the second Yarn Factory's episode, to be exact. She told a wonderful story, and we're going to touch on that a little bit here in this episode. And then if you just pay attention to what's going on in the community, in the Daily Journal, you'll see, you're thinking, Alicia Kleinert. That name sounds really familiar. She happens to be the founder of the very first independent senior adult day center here in Kankakee County called MCA. And welcome, Alicia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Great to finally have you on.
Exactly.
Well, I should say too, I forgot not to even mention we've done several news stories on your progress as well for Kankakee Podcast News. So here I am, I completely, some weeks it's just like a blur when I'm putting those news episodes together. It's like, oh yeah, we did that last week.
Yeah.
It seems like that was like 3 months ago already, but it was just last week. But no, I feel like we did at least 2 or 3 stories since we started the news podcast just on like your progression.
Yes.
And it's been really great to see, as of recording this now in December of 2024, I mean, you just opened your doors about a week or 2 ago.
Yeah, it's been a week.
But it's been a long journey. And it continues like this.
It does.
Sure, like you're officially open now, but there's so much to get into. And we're gonna dive into to all that here shortly. But touching back on your Yarn Factory listeners episode, it was one of my favorite stories. I could relate to the trumpet player part. And I remember when I saw you at Merchant Street Music Fest this last year, and you ran into Bill Dyke, who ended up being the guy, the band instructor you were talking about in the story was Bill Dyke, who was a band director at Kankakee and then also at BBCHS for many years. And he's been on this podcast as well. Great guy. I worked with him at the radio station.
Yes.
So you had a very interesting childhood because your mother was ill for a number of it, if not for all of it.
Yeah,
of
probably
your childhood.
As long as I can date back, as young as 7 years old. Yeah, in and out of the hospital. She beat cancer, and then she's suffered with a series of strokes, and high blood pressure, things like that. So she was in and out of the hospital a majority of my childhood.
So how did that, and how many siblings do you have?
So she just had 2 children, so myself, and then I have a brother who's 10 months younger than me. So
so you're pretty close in age.
Yeah, we're very close in age. I was born in May and he was born the following March.
But that must have made such an interesting dynamic though, with your mother being in the hospital so often.
Yeah,
and
we were pretty reliant on ourselves when she was in the hospital. My dad's a truck driver, and so he would be gone a lot of the time, making money for us. And so when she would be in the hospital, we would be with family, or my dad would be home with us. So
you were raised by grandparents a lot, or?
Not necessarily. I remember being home a lot, but I had this best friend. And she still is my best friend to this day. But I spent a lot of time with her and her family growing up. I would spend nights over there, being at her house. And do
you want to give that friend a shout out?
Yeah, Courtney Montgomery.
Yay, Courtney.
Yeah, we've known each other since we were 6 years old. And her family, longtime residents of Kankakee, Brenda and Greg Montgomery, amazing people. They were sort of my second parents growing up too.
And you grew up here in the county, right?
Yeah. I grew up, born and raised here. I was born at Riverside, went to Kankakee High School, Kankakee Junior High, and then I went to Montessori, so LCC. I was there from kindergarten through 6th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, the story you share with Yarn Factory is you're telling how your mom was sick a lot of the time. She was pretty much bedridden. It sounds like,
pretty
for
much.
The most part.
At that time,
after the several strokes, I imagine.
And then her kidneys went out, so she had, was on dialysis. And so before going to a facility where you can go and get dialyzed, she was doing it at home for a while.
And you to help, just kind of keep her chugging along in life. You learned the Montel Williams song
I did.
on your trumpet.
I did.
And that everyone, I remember, was just busting up laughing, out of all the songs that you could learn.
I know. It was that one. That was what she requested. And so, and it made sense because she did spend most of her time in bed all the time.
Watching daytime TV.
Yeah, daytime TV. So all my children, Montel Williams, things like that. So...
I guess at least it wasn't like the Jerry Springer theme song.
No. Yeah. I'm like, well, I guess it could have been a lot worse. But it was really something that I was able to do for her and kind of bring joy to her. I am a mama's girl. And so I love to help. I love to be there. My brother and I slept with her even at that age and older. So we were very close to our mother. And so for her to request that and then her eyes light up with such joy, even though I didn't know anything with music, I didn't know how to read music. I pretty much learned by ear. And so,
that served you well.
It did. It did. So I got close and just the light in her eyes and, the glow of her smile just really did something for me. And so that really what sort of catapulted this sort of love of music and wanting to practice and get better so I can play for her.
Yeah. And, we are at time of recording. This is actually her birthday.
Yeah. So it's her birthday.
It's so fitting that we're talking about her on her birthday.
Yeah. So, and I often reflect back and I will go out to her grave later on and put flowers and stuff on and just reflecting back and she's been the best mother to me. Here in heaven than she was able to be on earth. So I start to reflect on the words and the last conversations that I'd have had with her. And it made sense. So she really fulfilled everything that she said she was going to do. She did say that she's not going to be here for me when I have my babies and when I get married, but she said she promised that she will be there every step of the way and that I will be able to feel her around. And she's definitely lived up to that. So that's what I'm truly grateful for. So it's a day that I can look back and really smile and have so much gratitude for that.
And learning your story and your upbringing, it's really no surprise to hear how you're now, what you're doing with MCA, Senior Adult Day Center, and how that came to be. And before we completely dive into that, before that started to come to life, you went to college.
Yeah.
And you became a respiratory
therapist
for kids,
neonatal and pediatrics. Yeah.
Which also I feel like is a credit to probably your mother.
Yeah. So definitely, just having the ability to help, the vulnerable populations such as our kids and our elderly. It gives me a sense of gratitude, but also fills this sort of void in me that at that time, as a child and seeing my mother suffering and going through illness, that I wasn't able to provide to her. So it sort of fills that for me.
What exactly are some things like, what does a respiratory therapist do?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it deals with your lungs, but what in the world does that entail?
Yeah. So we manage the life support. So for instance, for a neonatal or a pediatric patient, we provide support with breathing treatments, but also if that patient has a artificial airway, so such as a tracheostomy, or if the child is sedated and needing life support, so machines for them, we manage those machines. So ventilators, we manage, the breathing tubes that go in the mouth or the ones that are the trachs that are in our tracheas.
So getting to MCA, Senior Adult Day Center now, this has been something that I think predates COVID.
Yeah.
The idea of it does.
Yeah.
When did you come up with this idea in your mind? Did it start with your mom and, the lacking care for her during the day, or does it not have anything to do with?
It's not really related to my mother per se. The idea was born from myself and my children, just being able to see in our community that our elderly had no resources in terms of activities or respite, people to come in and just, be kind and take care of them. And also those resources for caregivers. So that's sort of kind of where the idea came from. I have always, I started off my healthcare career as a CNA. So before a respiratory therapist, I worked in long-term care. And so I've always had a sense of wanting to help on a higher scale. And that always at that time in my life or season in my life was outside of my scope of practice. And so for me, I just kept sort of chasing that feeling.
So where were you working as a CNA? Were you working in an assisted living?
A nursing home. Yeah. Okay. So I was I was working in Clifton. Okay. So when it was Merkel, I think it's now LaBella. And then also Prairie View Lutheran Home out in Danforth. So I worked there as well. And I did do some home health care in Champaign when I was out there in my 20s. And then I worked at Kankakee County Nursing Home as well.
So what were the things you were seeing working in nursing homes that I'm sure as you've been putting together MCA, you've have to have been having a lot of flashbacks
absolutely.
to those days as a CNA in those nursing homes to think, I remember this was lacking or this wasn't right or,
just to see the isolation of the elderly. Many of them would not have family who visit them on a regular basis. And so the loneliness that they experience, but also the family members that did come in to visit their loved ones, just feeling the loss during that process of getting them to the nursing home and then acclimating to their new normal. So just being able to be in that experience and situation, I was able to feel what those family members were feeling. I do have a pretty empathetic soul.
Yes,
and
you do.
So for me, I tend to put myself in the shoes of these family members or the elderly that may be going through certain experiences. So I was able to sort of reflect back on that and remember sort of what that felt like inside. And, just coming up with solutions on how to be able to, tailor to that just based on my experiences. Every single job that I've had in healthcare has been in relation to some sort of caregiving role or figuring out, well, hey, I see that this has been identified as an issue. Well, what do you think about this solution? But, not being able to execute that fully because I was always outside. That was always outside of my scope of practice at that time.
Yeah. So before you could even start to put together MCA, what was some of that pre-work that you had to do before with some of the research, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you were trying to figure out, okay, is there in fact a need for this?
Yeah. So basically, even before the need was identified, I knew I had to elevate myself. So that involves going back to school. I did not start college until I was 26 years old. So I didn't go to college right away because my mom was sick. And so I pretty much just went out and got a job right away after high school. So the first step was to go back to school. So at that time I was a CNA. So I decided to enroll in KCC and got, and I've been out of school. So I had to start with the prereqs before the prereqs.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I started in, introductory speech. I started in, basic math, things like that. So I was in class with, as a 26-year-old with 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. So that was a humbling experience. But
yeah,
I
I'm sure
knew,
it was. And you were like, probably felt really old, even though you weren't old.
I did. And, some days embarrassed, so it took a lot of convincing myself and, believing in myself that, this is what I needed to do if I wanted something better. And I had already had a child by then and I was married. And so I had the balance of, home life and then now college. And so I spent 3.5 years at KCC. And, a normal associate's degree is 2 years.
Right. But if you're a working person.
Yeah. I was going full time. I was going to school full time. So technically, if I had started, if I had tested, into my program, I would have just been there 2 years. But I didn't test you have to test into health career programs now. And so my grades were not high enough. So I had to start off to take these classes before I was eligible to get into the program.
Gotcha.
So that's where that 3.5 years came from. So I was going to school full time.
Well, good for you for sticking to it. Because, man, I just think about that and...
It's difficult. But I knew I had a goal and I wanted to, go after that goal. So fast forward, I graduated KCC with my respiratory therapy degree. And so then I went right to work in Chicago. And then that's when I started to do a little bit more research. I still had this inkling of wanting to do more,
Yeah.
I wasn't so much, I was satisfied, but then that would end.
And so you're looking for something more. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't exactly clear to you that you should start a senior day center yet?
Not at that time.
Okay. What was it? What was the moment? Did you have like an epiphany moment or was it more of a gradual?
So the moment was when I eventually got my master's degree. I completed my master's degree. And the next step was leadership development programs and an executive position at a hospital. That was my track. And I was not getting calls. I would get denial letters. And so that's when I started to sort of look at what my options were. And then I had another traumatic thing in life happen is I got divorced. And so, this life I've had for almost 20 years came to a halt and I needed to find a new normal. And so for me, I wanted to kind of think outside the box. And then I wanted something that would be sustainable for myself and my kids at that time. So the talk of entrepreneurship started to sort of come up.
Yeah. And anyone who is in entrepreneurship, it's both flexible and not flexible.
Correct.
All in one thing.
Yes.
Like it can be flexible, but then, it's more or less you're going to be working every day.
Every day.
But you can kind of choose when you work. Sometimes. Sometimes. It just depends on what it is that you're starting up.
Exactly. And for me, I had this grandiose idea and this huge dream that there was no time for rest. Because the minute I would rest, something else would pop up in my head pertaining to this goal or this dream. And so I had to get up and write it down, or I had to go and do more research on that said.
But what was it though that drew you to the senior day center?
So it was my past with working as a CNA, and then also just my interactions with seniors on a daily basis. I'm a big advocate of community service, and I was also in the church as well. So there was a lot of elderly people in the church, and I also worked for some nuns, so Sisters of the Holy Heart of Mary, who was in St. Mary's Hospital at that time.
Yes.
So I took a job there as a CNA too, prior to going to respiratory therapy school. So I've always had a fondness for our senior population. And so embarking on an entrepreneurial, path, it was just only fitting to go towards the seniors.
So you came up with this idea, and where did you go after that?
Yeah.
With MCA.
I went to the drawing board and I drew out what I wanted, and then I started planting goals in the pictures. So it took a lot of brainstorming, and it took a lot of figuring this out because, yes, I wanted this business, but I didn't know what it looked like at that time. I didn't know if it was going to be an adult daycare. I didn't know if it was going to be an assisted living. I didn't know if it was going to be a long-term care center. I didn't know. And so I started planning down my goals and what my options were. And once I did that, I started to do my research. So looking at where I lived, looking here at Kankakee County, what was there a need for? We have plenty of nursing homes. We have assisted livings. So what is it that we don't have? And so that's how I was able to narrow that down. And then going from there, I started to do additional research with what are the state regulations? What are the rules? What can I do? What can I not do? How much will it cost? So all of those different questions. And then once I was able to answer those questions, now I needed to switch track and learn, now what is business?
Oh
so,
boy.
There's
a bundle full right
There's a bundle full.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Depending on what direction you go.
Exactly.
I'm sure that's driven you crazy too.
It still drives me crazy because I think I have it, and then there's a whole other sector to this said thing that I thought I had. So it's always changing. But to me, that's the part that I love. I love the learning. And so once I, solidified this plan and the name, and now it was time to put myself out into the community. All of this planning and all of this research, things like that, I was behind closed doors. No one didn't talk about it or anything like that. So once I flipped the switch and went out to put myself out in the community, that's when things started to really unfold.
Yeah, I mean, you put yourself out there to so many different people in so many different places.
Yeah.
And you've gotten a lot of help.
Absolutely.
And you've got there's a whole board and everything.
Yes.
You're officially a nonprofit organization.
Yes.
With a full board to go along with it.
Yes.
And there's a lot of planning.
Yes.
In place, obviously, for all of that.
Yes.
So when you put yourself out to the community, what was the first thing you did?
Wow. The first thing I did is I utilized social media first. I researched who were our local leaders and officials. And then also what other nonprofit organizations were around in our community. So I was able to reach out to them specifically and meet with them. So some of the first people that I met was Jamie, the owner of Matea's Joy. And so I was able to gain a lot of traction for myself just by asking those questions and reaching out to other nonprofit organization founders who had gone through the process before.
You finally put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You're reaching out to other nonprofit organizations here in the county. You're starting to learn some of the things you need, or you're getting some guidance from them. What were some of the barriers? And of course, you still face some of those barriers. But, for an adult day center, what were some of those barriers you were facing? I mean, you didn't have funding just out of the gate.
No, I didn't have any money.
So how did you get the money for?
Yeah, so I was still working full time, and so I made a budget for myself and, reserved a certain percentage of my income and started my own business bank account. I cut a lot of corners as well. So a lot of the work I did on my own. So I formulated my own entity. So I did all of my own 501c3 paperwork. I put on an event and found my own board members. I did a lot of the sort of footwork on my own, which helped save a lot in the beginning. And then once it was time to open the business bank account, I used my own funds, that percentage. So I would take some out of my check and it would go right into that. So that helped build up the fund as well. And then really honestly, me just talking about my mission to strangers. Last year at this time, we just had Giving Tuesday. Last year, I was working a night shift job. And so I was taking care of a family member's dying loved one. Somehow I just kind of wanted to lively up the room. And so I started talking about my endeavor with the adult daycare and things like that. Well, turns out these people were very, very, very wealthy and believed in my mission. And I had my website up at that time. I designed my own website and all of that. So I had this, material to present to them. And by the end of that shift, I was gifted $1,000 towards my mission.
Wow.
And so, it was things like that would happen, which is how I was able to sort of get the money to get started. So I would, get enough money to get some momentum to get to the next stage. And then now I would need to do that again because the money had run out for either what was marketing or website or different events I had to pay and go to. That's what I did. So I found that if I just went and talked about my mission and what I wanted to do, people would be moved in their hearts to want to give. So that's how I was able to sort of continuously progress forward.
Yeah, if people were following you at that time, they saw you at Stafari a lot, having conversations with different people all the time. Yeah. Myself included, we sat down a few times, and I know just from those conversations, you had run through a lot of different hurdles.
Yeah.
But here you are. It was a good 2 years to get this off the ground.
It was about 20 months.
Okay.
So almost 2 years.
But here you are. You finally opened up. You had found a space. You're attached to a home furniture store.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which do they still sell furniture? I can't.
No, they
so
they downsized.
Just say a home appliance or home air, heating,
and plumbing. Yeah.
Yes, and plumbing. Because Jeff retired.
Yes.
Jeff Alden. Shout out to Jeff. I used to help him record his radio commercials.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
But anyway, you're actually in a piece of what used to be where they would display their furniture.
Yeah, we're in that middle unit where the showroom was.
Yes.
So it's been completely renovated. And I know people have been in home appliance. You would walk in and you see the huge Lazy Boy sign. Yeah. And then there was some stairs. Well, the stairs have now there's a wall there. We have a beautiful kitchenette and a couple bathrooms in there. It just completely renovated the space. So it's beautiful.
And so the next step now is, as of recording this, you are taking it's private pay currently.
Yes. Yeah, currently it's private pay. We're working on getting our certification to accept Medicaid through the state of Illinois. So that in itself is a process. There is a capital requirement involved in order to secure those contracts. But once we do, we'll be able to open up our list. We do have a waiting list of those Medicaid patients waiting. So right now, my goal is to build the census up so I can have the funds I need to become Medicaid.
We've been talking for a while, and I feel like for those that maybe have no idea, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory what a senior day center is. Yeah. But just in case we haven't made it clear enough on like what the overall goal and mission is of a senior day center. Because while it's not a completely new concept in Kankakee County, as you've made it clear recently, it's been promoted that MCA is the first,
right?
But technically, it's the first independent.
Correct. Yeah,
because
we had an adult daycare before.
Yes, St. Mary's Provena.
Yes,
had one, and but that's no longer
correct.
But there was one in existence.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there was any others besides that. But I feel like you see a lot of adult day centers, senior adult day centers up north, close to Chicago.
Yes,
but not so much down here.
No.
So yeah, just explain what that is.
So with it's adult day services, adult daycare. It's basically a day or a place where people can come and are seniors who need supervision, who are 60 and older. They may have some chronic illness, they may have some dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that. And so it's there to be a resource for the caregivers who are taking care of them. They may not be quite ready for assisted living or memory care or skilled nursing. And so they live still out in the community. So it just provides a space where they can go and be socially stimulated with their peers, have meals and, some light medical services as well. There are 3 types of an adult daycare. You have a social model, which is just strictly activities. So Catholic Charities recently partnered with Community Cup. So they have a senior center as well on Jeffrey. Okay. So they just have a social model. So that's sort of a true senior center. There are no staff or anything. It's just a place where independent seniors can go.
It's more like a community center.
A community center, correct. Yes.
And they can come and go as they please.
Come and go as they please. Yeah. And there's, some structured activities, some not. And then you have the adult day health, which is the business model that I have. So you do tailor towards more of a health medical perspective and social model. So you have your ones that have chronic illness and things like that. And then you also have a memory care adult daycare.
Which is probably more advanced, obviously.
More advanced. And then that's specifically for your dementia, Alzheimer's. Yeah. So we are dementia friendly and Alzheimer's friendly. So that is something that I was really passionate about incorporating into the business model when I was thinking about, sort of what I wanted this to look like.
So does your staff or volunteers have to be specifically trained to know how to deal with dementia patients then?
Yes. So we do offer a training. We just had one this past Monday and we had over 30 people show up. So that was, my first event. I was very, very, very just grateful to see the amount of interest. So Cindy DeGroot, she's a certified dementia practitioner, a longtime employee of Riverside, she's amazing, has helped me in sort of the background with MCA. And so she presented.
That's good, because if anyone would know
it would be Cindy.
Senior care, it would be Cindy.
Yes. Yeah. She's been phenomenal, an amazing resource to me. And so she presented as well. And so did a phenomenal job. And it just, she really is there to educate us on what the process of dementia is, and then also how to respond. So for me, it's quality over quantity. So when our senior participants are there, we want to be able to meet them at their level, but also we want to provide a high quality of care. We want them to feel seen. We want the family members to feel safe leaving their loved one with us.
Right, because you're only at this point, you're taking what, like 8 at the most?
No, 20. We can take up to 20 a day. 20. Okay. Yes. Yeah. But right now we have 4. We have 4 right now. And so with the volunteers, the process is you have to fill out an application, but you have 3 hours of dementia training, just so you are aware of your approach towards them. So it's being mindful about where they are in their disease process and how we can assist them along the way.
Okay. And, I know the overall plan includes to have multiple facilities around the county.
Yeah.
And, where you're at now on Station Street in Kankakee is just the start.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm completely dedicated to providing an excellent service for people who are still in the community, but most important, those caregivers. Our baby boomers in just a few short years will be our largest population. And so not only
in the senior
our seniors 60 and older, 65 and older.
Yeah.
So we have an influx of our baby boomers aging. So they're living longer, but they're also sick. And so for me, the best thing that I can do is to provide a space where there's education and training, but also a place where our loved ones can drop their the seniors off just so they can have a break as well.
Yeah.
And that the environment is conducive to their disease process.
Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned this very early on in our conversation, talking about this is really providing a resource for caregivers.
Absolutely.
Because they need a break too.
Absolutely.
Even if it just happens to be like once a week that they go to MCA.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that helps that caregiver exponentially.
Does. Absolutely.
Their mother or father or uncle or whoever it is living with them full time.
Yeah. I have 2 families currently who thank me on a daily basis because they've seen the change in their loved ones. I mean, I have them, they're up and ready waiting for the bus in the morning.
You are offering transportation.
I do offer transportation, door-to-door transportation, so to and from the facility. And so just providing a structured routine for them to get out of the house and go somewhere, and it's fun where they go, is really what this is all about. And so to hear the stories from the family members and to see the tears, I know that all of this work is worth it. So I want to be able to provide that for everybody, whether you live in Shabance, whether you live in Piatone, whether you live in Mantino. And so that's really my overall goal, is to provide a level of quality that has empathy and love in it, but we're still able to tailor to their medical, but also provide that environment where they're social. Your dreams don't die when you age. Your talents, they don't die when you age. So I think that it's really important to highlight the amount of wisdom and gifts that our senior population has.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of the pictures you've been posting of some of the activities you've been doing, like art and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see some of the art projects.
Yeah, we have dance therapy as well. So, and music therapy and pet therapy. So all of these systems that I'm developing and implementing are just so beautiful to see coming from the other side. And so that's really what it's all about, is, finding the people with the heart to want to, jump on board and really build this tremendous service that we're going to have here.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, is there anything else about MCA, Senior Adult Day Center, that you want people to know? I mean, obviously, if they want to reach out to you.
Yeah. So we're on Facebook. So you can find us at MCA Senior Adult Day Center, but also our website. It's www.mcasenior.adultdaycenter.org. We do have our events and then also our pictures. So I do like to put in updates of what we're doing in the center day to day. We do love our volunteers. I just want to shout out to the people who have just graciously donated their time to help me build this business, whether it's mentorship or, whether it's them coming in and donating. We just got a large donation of paper products, things like that. So as I'm building my census, a lot of that takes the burden off of, my expenses. So I'm able to spend more time with the seniors.
Yeah, so absolutely. Anyone else you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah.
While we're on the shout out train.
Kankakee all day, for real. We have some amazing people in Kankakee. And when you're embarking on, owning your own business, I really highly recommend you start off with your city officials and your leaders. Find out who your aldermen are that you want to start your business in. Go to the ECDA, the Economic
Economic Development Agency.
Yes, Alliance.
Or Economic and Community Development Agency.
Yes, we know it, Barbie. We promise.
Yes.
And and your local chamber. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten this far had I not reached out and utilized all of the services and programs through the city. So, our leaders and our officials are honestly really our biggest fans. Mayor Curtis has been so supportive. People from the fire department, from the police department, down to our ECDA, down to the library. Allison has been amazing. Hannah, just being able to have just resources in different areas of the community to sort of bounce ideas off of and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or do you know a resource for that? So I really love that I've created relationships with different kinds of people in our community as well. So I don't really stick to just one genre or one culture.
No, I mean, I see even you like unaffiliated with MCA completely. You're always out volunteering, you and your kids, or just even if it's just on social media, you're always cheering for people in our community, and that means a lot. So.
Yeah, I really think that for me, what's gotten me through the hard and what's gotten me through the barriers is gratitude and positivity. I love to see other people win, and every person that wins here in Kankakee, it's a win for Kankakee because we have so much development and have come so far that it only just makes our quality of life better.
Well said. Very well said. Well, Alicia, thank you so much.
Thank you so much
on Kankakee Podcast. And thank you for all you're doing with MCA.
Thank you.
It's very much needed. And let me know if there's anything else we can do to help, keep the word going, because obviously, this is just the start.
Yeah, it's just the beginning.
So hopefully you continue to grow and you can open up some other facilities in the county.
Absolutely.
And I know you've been eyeing Mantino for a long time.
I know, it's so pretty there. Yeah, I have been. It's beautiful there. And, just reaching out to our rural areas, we have so many people who could utilize this service. And so the more the merrier, honestly. Okay. So thank you.
Right. Thank you, Alicia. That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Stephanie Vanderweide for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll. This river